Hit me up, interviewer.
Danny Karlinsky, the one and only. People don't know about you, man. Not anymore. You're too old.
I know. I'm ancient.
How old are you now? How old are you now?
41. I'm 40. I'm sorry. I'm 40. I'm already thinking about next year. I'm 40.
I heard you. I was just chatting with Malika right before you. I interviewed her as well. She said that you guys went down to the Bay and scrimmaged Revolver, the Masters Beach team. Team USA.
Yeah.
And you won.
No. They beat us.
How was it? I heard it was a good game, actually.
It was a really good game. Well, so we have an O line, then two hybrid lines that are like, I think we might be making a mistake, but anyways, there's like an O line and then two D lines.
Yeah.
And one is like slightly better on O potentially, but we kind of made them to where we feel good about them both being able to score after a break.
Got it.
But maybe not like we could have stacked one to be a great
defense
flex O line. No, like a flex O line.
Like a swing, yeah.
Yeah. So anyways, so the pure O line had 2 turns on the first point and 1 turn on our first O point, and then didn't have any turns. And we only got broken one of those times. So the pure O line only got broken once against Revolver.
It's a good defense.
But they did get
on beach.
On beach. And these guys have never played beach, and there was only half of their team. Yeah. But our other lines that came in to play some like O points, I think they took some points off of those guys. But we ended up getting a ton of turns on them, but we just couldn't convert because like they're good on D as well as O. So
they are.
So I think we ended up having it was a good, very competitive tight game.
Good. Is BVH your coach?
No, BVH and I are both team managers and captains.
Got it. Okay. Do you have a coach for that team? I don't think you probably don't even need a coach for Team USA Masters.
I mean, it'd be nice. No, it's not needed.
Sure. Yeah. That's cool. I mean, this kind of speaks to the length of Ultimate you've played and that you're still playing. You're playing Masters. I mean, now you're in Grandmasters.
This is Grandmasters. I'm not playing Masters.
Oh, this is Grandmasters.
Yeah. By the way, just to make it more impressive, but sad for me, like now that I'm playing Grandmasters, but more impressive that it was all 40-year-old plus dudes who were in that game against Revolver.
People don't know who you are. I mean, this is. I mean, we're gonna get into the context of who you are, but this is that squad. I'm sure is stacked as hell. Is Mac on that team?
Yep. Mac's on that team.
I kind of guessed. Is this the one that Steve Sullivan is putting together, or Steve is probably doing the mixed team? Anyways.
Yeah. I think.
But so Danny, you've been playing Ultimate for a long time. You actually are from a family, a pretty well-known family in the Ultimate scene, specifically in Seattle, the Karlinsky family. Your older brother, Dennis, played for Sockeye for a long time. He also played UC Santa Cruz, both our alma mater. He helped bring UC Santa Cruz to a national championship in 1991. And he captained Sockeye during their dynasty, I believe. I could be wrong about that. He wasn't a captain?
No captaining. No.
No captaining.
Where he and I diverged, which is that after college, he didn't captain again.
He didn't captain again. Okay. My mistake. He was
with them during the
yes.
Their dynasty.
Oh, I've seen that footage, Vaulty Village.
Yeah. Oh yeah. The graininess. So like there's a couple pixels in there.
It's actually, you watch it now, it's funny. The forms are different and everything, but the speed is up there, Speed's up there. You played at UC Santa Cruz, graduated in 2008, right?
Yep.
Led Santa Cruz back to nationals a couple times. You also played Santa Barbara Condors when they were still Santa Barbara, not Southern California.
Yep. 1 year. Yep.
Just 1 year. Okay. And Revolver a couple of years or just one?
Yep. The founding year and the year after.
Okay. And then you went up to Seattle and you played Emerald City.
So I got cut from I got cut from Sockeye in 2008, ended up playing with the Condors, got cut from Sockeye in 2009, played Voodoo, and then in 2010 started my own team, or started a new team with Chris Kassedner.
Yes.
Which was like a combo. Yeah, which was like a combo of just retired sockeye guys like Chase and Jeremy Cram and Jimmy Chu and Mike Jager. And then started sockeye in 2011.
2011, the infamous 2011 season.
Yeah, that was my first year.
Yeah, there's good footage of that. The regionals game to go, Furious versus Sockeye, I believe.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Game.
That's Gabe Zonka's on that field. People don't talk about him either. But you've had a pretty long career. In fact, 2012 you brought Sockeye back to nationals. You helped bring him back, and then 2013 you got to finals.
Mm-hmm.
And were you a captain that year?
Yes, I captained Sockeye every year other than 2011 and 2017.
The last year that you played.
No, 18 was my last year.
Sorry, you're right. Yeah, 18 was your last year. In that 2013, you guys were pretty young. I mean, Matt Rader was kind of hitting his form. Who was on that Rhino team that just beat Sub-Zero?
I know.
Pool play, which was quite interesting because he actually plays with a lot of those guys on the win team. And
Sub-Zero so close.
Huh?
Sub-Zero was so close to winning that game.
Stop. And then Sockeye for a long time and kind of led them back into some level of dominance. They actually picked up right after you left and picked up a championship, which was getting them back on the board. I think they were kind of knocking on the door for a while because you went to finals 2 times, 2013, 2015. And then and honestly, one of the best games I've ever seen in Ultimate was that 2018 semifinals, Pony versus Sockeye, watching you guys play. And I love that game. I was on the sideline watching that.
It was an intense game.
Very intense game. 2016, you were the captain of Team USA.
Mm-hmm.
WGC?
WUGC, yep.
Yeah, WUGC. World Ultimate Guts Championship, something like
that. Very, very odd. But
yeah. Got a medal with them. You kind of have a pretty illustrious career, actually, as a player. But people don't talk too much about your coaching career.
Mm-hmm.
You've coached UW Element, brought them to a championship. You won a championship with them. 2012.
Yep.
And I don't know if I read this correctly someplace, but Seattle Riot.
Yeah. In an assistant coach capacity.
Coach capacity.
Yeah. With my brother.
Oh, with Dennis.
Yeah. Yep.
Interesting. Okay. What year was that?
Let's see. I coached UW 11, whatever, the 11 season, the 12 season.
Yep.
So 2 seasons. So I think Riot was 2010. 2010.
Oh, wow.
I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then even outside of that, you've been to Israel with Ultimate Peace, coached some clinics out there for the youth.
Yep.
And you've been to Medellin and coached with, I believe, Sockeye.
Coached Riot.
Oh, you coached.
Yes.
With Riot down there.
Yeah, that was my like solo Riot. I went down as their coach.
Oh, so this is just what, TEP or something like that? Okay, but I thought you coached some clinics down there as well.
We did. Yeah, so like
with Riot.
going down there, the kind of U.S. teams as part of the agreement, right? Like a partnership, if you will. We're going down there and we're coaching clinics ahead of time, and then we're there playing as well.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah.
So you're really kind of being all over the world with this stuff. I kind of want to. What got you? I mean, I know you don't. Maybe have you ever coached like youth, like specifically like high school or?
Yeah. When I first got to Seattle in 2009, I immediately started coaching. So I started coaching like the high school league, the high school leagues. There was like the hat tournament league. So I did that. And that was like Henry Fan was a little baby. Yeah. And I I got to coach him, and they were like, who are you? They wanted all these like cut alums to be their coaches, and I was like the scraps, right? So that was fun. And then I coached, I was coaching 2 middle school teams and a high school team over the next 2 seasons.
No way. And those, what years were those?
9, 10, and 11 I was coaching.
So you really front loaded a lot of your coaching.
Yeah, I had this like stretch right when I got here that I had a lot of time. I was getting to know the city and I wanted to be part of the community. And so I just kind of dove into the opportunities that I had coaching.
Yeah, I kind of did something similar with Berkeley High School when I was in the Bay. Well, how did you get into coaching then? Why did you want to do coaching?
So I think that there's like a interest in a forcing function. So one is just a general, like I like being part of leadership and strategy and culture shaping. So there's that like general interest in that. Then from a coaching perspective, you get to do that from a completely different kind of angle of approach. So that was always like interesting to me. The forcing function was that if you want to be part of a community, I think you kind of have to like look at all the access points. And so I was new to Seattle and I wanted to like really understand what it meant to be a Seattle Frisbee player. And there's a bunch of ways that you can do that. But a different experience, certainly from where I grew up in Southern California, but like definitely from Santa Cruz, as you know, there's not like middle school and high school. Every middle school and high school does not have a team, but in Seattle, every one of them does. Some of them have multiple teams, and then several at that point elementary schools do. Now like every school has at minimum one. So there was just a desperate need for coaching. And there would be a lot of opportunities for someone being like, I'm doing a little bit of coaching, you want to come with me? And then that kind of cascades into like, will you coach the B team, or can you step in for me? And so there was a little bit of like, it was just fun to do that, and that felt like being part of the community in a way that I hadn't been able to experience elsewhere. And then it was like very clear that I just loved it. It was so fun to be part of all of these like experiences where either kids were learning for the first time, or they were like, I see what it's like to be at the top, at the elite level. Like, how do I get there? And that's where college is, a very interesting and fun experience in itself.
Yeah, I think Washington has served as kind of a model for what coaching can be, because the coaching pipeline actually from the lowest form all the way to the top is quite impressive. I think Minnesota has that. They have a lot of coaches, so many coaches. And connecting the pipeline is actually really important. And having the coaches actually be connected is really big. I think that's what this Minnesota coaching conference is going to be about as well.
Yeah.
The reason why the Bay Area right now, I mean, you look at all of the people on Revolver right now, they went through the elementary school and high school coaches in the Bay. I mean, Maddie Seng coached some of them at Willard Middle School.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And we had 10 coaches at Berkeley High School that I think all the guys who went through Berkeley High School, Leo Gordon, there's a guy who played with them, Riley Kirkham Davis as well in years past. They all went through like lots of coaches as well in the same type of vein. So specifically with UW Element, I feel like this is probably the one that you were closest to as a coach. It seems like kind of the apex of your coaching was UW Element. It's not many times I get to speak to a college coach who got to help lead a team to a national championship. And I kind of, what roles did you play as their coach? And when I say that, I'm looking for more of a direct answer with like your role. Was it practice planning, mental health check-ins, player development, line calling, strategy, scouting, film analysis, anything, any of the vein that falls under the umbrella of coaching? What was your role for that team?
Yeah. So I'll like to answer that question. I think the first step is what's the process to getting to that answer. And so the first thing is like evaluating what the captains think the team needs. And so we had a really great group of captains, and we kind of walked through the, like, what are you good at as a captain core? Like, what are the strengths, what are the weaknesses and gaps? The second part is like, what have you experienced in the past that is like, man, that's the special sauce that we think we have. Let's lean on that. That this is the stuff that kind of like either brought us down or we didn't reach our potential because we didn't look at it in XYZ way. So we'd like to reevaluate that. So that's like the first layer. And then inevitably that led to the conclusion, which was they had good success with previous coaches that were like, I'm going to practice plan when I'm there. I'm going to have the like strategy at the high level and the kind of even at the tactical level, like point by point. And then there was the like, we want to like push from a captain's perspective, this concept of like ownership of play and intensity and fitness. And so they did that layer completely on their own. And then I strongly believe that for college, a coach that does everything is not the right solution, not because it may not be the right way to like peak, but I'm like, college is the middle ground. I think if you think about like most of the kids have played sports, could be ultimate, could be different. And then the ones that like play ultimate and get hooked are going to move to club. And I think that's where you're like, this is where you need to learn how to run a practice. You need to learn how to deconflict issues, social issues, behavioral issues, whatever it is. And you need to be able to like have the types of conversations you're going to have, which include like cutting players, benching players. So there's a little bit like me identifying the places of leadership growth that they were going to need and saying like, I could do that, but I'm not going to unless there's a reason for me to do that because you think it's like going to torpedo something. So long story short, that's giving you a direct answer in like a bigger, broader perspective of how I viewed my role and the responsibilities I think I needed for that team.
I think that you notched on it, or you hit a couple things I think are really important to talk about. Continuity between the previous season. You actually did a self-evaluation, a reflection of the previous season, strengths, weaknesses, gaps, and what was needed. Malika had talked a little bit about this where she says the ship is going and there are holes. And so a lot of her role was actually just plugging holes. And on top of that, and I agree with you on this sense, and I actually we do this in club as well, because we have a pretty young core. Pushing and propelling, building leaders. You're actually standing a layer above the captains a little bit, and you're kind of like, okay, these are things that you will have to do if you're going to play club. You're going to have to be leaders in this. You cannot be leaders in anything that you do if you don't actually learn to deal with conflict resolution, cutting someone, firing somebody, dealing with cultivating social culture. And you're identifying it from this altitude and then getting them to realize, oh, this is stuff that we have to do, reflect on that. Okay, I'm going to do that. I'm going to hold that role intentionally now and do it. That's actually something that I think a lot of coaches could start thinking more intentionally about, is like playing a layer above in the sculpting of like all this team management. So you, in a lot of ways, you actually just kind of like, when you were there, you provided more cohesion and organization and some strategy stuff, and just gave them a third party thing. You did like line calling and stuff at tournaments? Yeah. Kind of
so in particular, the second year that I coached, Drew Johnson was my assistant coach. And she was, we were able to split a lot of responsibilities. She did a lot of D-line stuff. And so there was like, there was the capacity to split those things and do what we needed across what we were seeing. I think this is like a little bit of, it's interesting to think about ultimate in 2012 versus ultimate in 2025 at the college level, which is that then I even did line calling and then play calling online. I think most teams, that's not needed in college today. The competitive, like, they're really trying and they've got a shot to maybe go to nationals or be competitive at nationals. I don't think that's necessarily as needed. So just an interesting kind of looking back perspective of my responsibilities there versus what I think coaches might be doing today.
I'm kind of curious what they're doing at the college level. I haven't really partaken in that too much. I helped Santa Cruz 1 year, and that was kind of interesting. When we won those tournaments, actually, that I was at. That was kind of fun.
Well, that's sick. Go Slugs.
Hey, go Slugs. So, okay, coaching obviously involves a lot of teaching. I actually think you're pretty good. You're a pretty good teacher. You are able to kind of, even in this interview right now with the first couple questions, you're able to kind of like distill an answer pretty quickly and organize it on the fly. What is your pedagogy with respect to teaching skills in Ultimate? And those skills can be anything. It doesn't have to be disc skills necessarily. It could be understanding the game of Ultimate, understanding how to organize a season, anything like that.
Oh man, that's a good question. Yeah. So like first principles, the very first part of this is what's the gap between a skill that you want to teach or have your team have by the end of the season. And I think if you show up to practice and you're like, whoa, no one knows how to throw a flick, you're having a fundamentally different conversation than everyone has great average disc skills, and now you want to elevate them to start thinking about how you break the mark in a particular way, or how you huck, or how you deal with wind, right? So those are all like the first order of a conversation about like what is your strategy for evolving and building on skills. I think that there's another set of principles here that people, like it goes into like, here's why I think this is good, this way is good, and this way is bad. Becomes the question of like, we need to get really good at isolating cutters and having someone being able to beat someone one-on-one in a space as an offensive cutter. There are multitudes of ways to solve for that. And I'll just break it down as there's the coaching principle of like, I don't want to actually do drills. I want to show you what it's supposed to look like. We can demo it a couple times, but then I want to get as many reps of this in game-like situations. Or there's the actually just isolating this, doing it over and over and over again until you're really fucking good at it is the best way to do that, because then you can go and apply it in games and you're not like trying to coach in a game as you're elevating that. And you're like, getting the nuances. I think this goes back to the answer I just gave you, which is I'm watching my brother coach his sons, Dash, who's 18, and Jacob, who's 14. Mm-hmm. And they play on like a pretty good team, and I get to see them play the like elite teams. And the kids who are the best players on these high school teams would have like decimated our college teams back when I was in college. Like, they can throw everything.
Yeah.
So this goes back to like a little bit of, I think it's been really fun to move away from coaching and then kind of start to come back, because the disc skills and the IQ and the experiences of most kids, including those who are playing other sports, like it's just an evolution of how people are playing sports. I think that are just way more dedicated and bought in, right? Like nutrition, physical exercise, knowledge, like all that stuff. I mean, you and I were like, someone's like, yeah, we got to get into shape. All right, great. Like go run 12 800s.
Yep.
And we're like, great. Like we'll be in the best shape of anybody. And now we know like, that's not totally true. How are you going to do that? How you should do that. So long story short, my pedagogy answer is find the skills. Identify first the skills that you want, and then identify that gap. Because if the gap is big, then you need to do more of the like, let's get a loop of repetition to solidify the body mechanics, the brain mechanics. Mm-hmm. And then you can coach with more, pinpoint accuracy during games. If you're like, this team is good and they just need to see what it looks like to get reps in different orientations and, stuck on the sideline doing this, but it's live game. You do that instead of the kind of more rote drill form.
Yeah.
So again, it's the skills assessment and then the gap.
I think your philosophy kind of hits really similar to something that Sub-Zero does. We call it the hairpin, and it's three phases essentially. With any skill, with anything that we do, the first step is learn. Depending on what it is, right? But you learn it, and that's when you do it the slowest. It could be just someone explaining it to you too. Number 2 is habitualize it, which is just like what you're saying. You just do it a million times. And then it's kind of that refinement. Habitualizing can be doing it in a drill, can be playing it, whatever. But you're just doing it. So you're connecting the brain to the body. You're doing the things, and then refining is sculpting it, so mastering it essentially. And I think that it's so interesting talking to coaches. They tend to find that same distilled, the pith of that philosophy at all times, which I think is natural. I mean, it's kind of just how we learn in general.
Yeah, I will. One thing I will remember, there was like an acute moment where the first year that I coached Element, Kyle Van Aken had coached the year before, and Element had, I believe that was the year that Shannon O'Malley won the Callahan, and they got, I think maybe to the semis. And when I was talking to them about the strengths coming off of that season that they wanted to continue, one of the things they said was, well, you know what, we like every practice, and it might be that my memory is like wrong on this, but I believe it was like every practice they would basically do this handler dump swing drill. And they were like, our strength is that like we can move the disc and attack and end up attacking a different side of the field because of this drill. And we just did it over and over and over again, every practice. And I was like, I'm like, okay, let me see how good you are at this. And I remember I just did my first, like, I'm here as your coach, nice to meet you, but I'm not doing anything, I'm just watching. And they started with this drill, and I was like, damn, you guys are really good at this drill, like are really, really good at this. And so there, I maybe to like counter my point, one other thing about coaching pedagogy is there's that line, convictions loosely held, something like that, or strong opinions loosely held, where yes, you should always do this, but always means that you don't do it every single time, right? Or you do this often, right? There's that space for like, yeah, if we got like really good at this, which might just require us to do just reps of this over and over again in drill form, and we can dominate because of that, yeah, lean in on that. But if you have this whole philosophy, feel good about your philosophy, but make sure that you're willing to be a little bit more flexible.
Break the system. Be open to break the system.
Yeah.
Which is normal. It's ultimate is not, it's not very rigid. You have to just break the system sometimes. Sometimes you just got to get open. Okay. I'm really curious about this especially because you played in a different era. You still play obviously right now, but you have played through multiple eras now, mid 2000s, 2010s, you're playing in the 2020s. You just even mentioned that 2025 high schoolers could probably beat us in 2000 whatever in our college years. And I agree with a lot of that. What even knowing all of that and knowing where Ultimate is going, what are the offensive principles and defensive principles at an abstract layer that that are core to you as either a player or a coach?
Philosophically, offensively, I think that time is a loop, right? So like if you look at Ring 2022-23, you see this team that looked a lot like Sockeye 2012, 2013. Then you look at Machine this year, and you see the like break lanes, the throws that they're looking at, and you're looking at other teams that you're like, if you're good with disc skills and you can play in a small space, you can be really dangerous. It's probably true that in 2 to 3 years, there will be another team that will look like 2015 Revolver, and they're using huge spaces to attack isolated individuals against a bunch of teams that are trying to do junk to shut down athletes, right? Like, who knows what that'll look like, but I'm seeing a little bit of like circularity of both skill sets and then like interest. So I think my philosophy is, if you've got, this goes back to skill sets always. So like, sorry if this feels redundant, but like, if you got a couple guys who are the best athletes on the field, you need to come up with a offensive structure that's going to isolate their strengths and then figure out how to like leverage that over and over and over again. If it's a reverse or there's some combo and it becomes, we got a couple handlers that can really do anything with the disc, then you got to run a system that isolates that and sets you on a course to like really use that as the fuel on a fire. Defensively, I think, this is a conversation I had with Lou Burris when we were coaching against each other. And he was just so ahead, I think, in coaching. I really think like him, Mike Donardis are like really two of the most exquisite coaches, and they really deploy almost completely different principles at large. But he started this whole like nebulous defensive flow, guarding spaces instead of people.
Yeah.
Is the smarter way to take advantage of the field. Mm-hmm. And I think it's like super interesting because I think that's true. And in club, I think the teams that know how to switch better, pick up spaces, how to attack on the defensive end into the spaces that an offensive player is going to come out into is where the sport should be. Yeah. And Pony has been a great example of that at large over the last maybe 6-7 years. But I also think that if you isolate like double game points across the last 10 years in college and club, across, open, women's, mixed, I bet you anecdotally there's a lot of one-on-one person defense that ends up getting played. So going back to the philosophy, you got to just be able to do both. You can no longer do just one. Mm-hmm. And I think that I have seen this played out where I like note at the club level, if I were coaching, I would be telling teams like, you look like you practiced person 90% of the time of practice because you were like, we're going to be really good there. And then you missed out on how many times your person sucked. And you could have been maybe better 30% of the time with a junk zone, mm-hmm. or a flex zone of some kind. So long story short, I think you got to be good at both now defensively.
And on the other side of that, offensively, playing against those two different types of things.
Oh yeah. This goes back into like, how do you do reps so that you're actually learning against the type of stuff that you'll see in a game? Yeah.
Our team this year, just to kind of briefly mention it, Sub-Zero, we gave the team lots of space to run what the captains kind of wanted, and we helped sculpt those things. And I think we run the team very much as a captain-run team, mm-hmm. like most clubs. And we helped adjust from there. And our defensive lines wanted to run very spatial defensive concepts. So guarding impacted spaces, but still being person, and allowing a weakness on the field. But allowing that weakness to be somewhere far away, which would be something that they would have to problem solve to get to. And going to nationals, our team got shook a little bit because they were facing just straight person defense. Good, straight, quality person defense. And the first game we played Ring, and they were shook. They weren't ready for it. They just weren't ready because we honestly had not given enough time for the offense to situate and feel comfortable against what would this be like. And it was so blatantly clear. And I was like, okay, noted. We have to plan in our phases through the season proper time to be good at both. And it was abundantly clear in those situations. I want to move to this. There's stuff with like emotions. I think an emotional game is so important in any context, and whether it's work or whatever, but specifically in sports. And as a coach, when you got players who are doing this, they're hitting the turbulence, whatever it is. They're hitting the emotions, the highs of the games. They're not really at like eye level. They're somewhere above. They're somewhere below. How do you handle frustration with a player, or had you done it?
Like, just to be clear, you're asking like when a player is frustrated about something that's happening in a practice or a tournament, and then you're like, how does the coach come in and kind of engage with that player?
I think that's a very specific way of taking it. You could also abstract it to when a person's out of balance. How would you handle it as a coach?
Oh, yeah. And yeah. Great. Okay. So there's a couple of things that I did when I was coaching Element that I who knows how like beneficial they end up being, because it's so anecdotal, like person to person, and then you're never going to measure this stuff. But I had each of the seasons, I had them read 2 different books. One of the years was The Inner Game of Tennis, and this other book that I'm totally spacing on. It was called shoot, I don't remember. Both years actually was The Inner Game of Tennis, now that I think about it. And then there's like another positive, there's some other additional book. And then we had like one practice literally dedicated to talking about
book club
side of of our sport. And that was a great opening for people to be like, I realize that when I'm frustrated, this part of my brain is taking over, and this is how I'm reacting. And then after I think about this, like deconstruction of this, here's what helps me get to the other side of it quicker, better, whatever it is. So there's this like, my first point here is like, this discussion, this question is one of the things that I think is underappreciated about teams, which is like all of us, from the coaches to the players to the injured players and the playing players, like they are all having their own different experiences as a practice or a game or a season progresses. That if we're like not just saying, hey, there are going to be days where you're just not going to be your best self, or you're going to be ticked off by something, whether it's the other team or your team that has done it, that like you're going to need to just give yourself a little bit of grace, is like, that's a bummer. We don't talk about it enough. Mm-hmm. So one is like, get that stuff out. Also open up a channel for people to have a conversation about themselves where they're sharing that broadly with the team in this very accessible way, because you don't want that to like happen and then try to like always come back and be like, Raj, I'm sorry I saw you blow up. No one's ever talked to you about this. Like, can you now tell us how you want to deal with it? And you've already kind of lost, I think, a little bit of the opportunity to have like figured it out in real time. So that's the first kind of thing that I bring when I think about team dynamics and the emotional state. The second one is, I'll just give you an example of like, typically there's the like physical, someone's being too physical with me. I got scared by a physical play. That's a different engagement mechanism. There's the like mental, I'm playing really poorly. This sucks. Now I'm bringing myself down. Maybe I'm bringing the other teammates down. Then there's the like other elements that are tough for coaches, which is like, you've got somebody who's at the bottom of your roster and is upset that, they've played no points or 2 points, and they've seen other people play 10 points. And now you're dealing with them going up. So there's all these like little things that I think actually deserve a fun dissection and way to like engage. I think what I will tell you is this: if you can have conversations with players before anything happens, you're like, hey, I told this story. Actually, I'll tell you this. Both years that I coached Element, I told this story before regionals. I said, guys, I said team. I said, before regionals of my freshman year at Santa Cruz, we had a team meeting, and all we talked about was like, we're going to we're here. Here's what we're going to do. Let's kick some booty, all that kind of stuff. And then we showed up, and I was one of a handful of freshmen who made the team. I played 4 points total at regionals, Raj. Total, not in a game. And then let me put the cherry on top. We finished 11th at regionals.
Yeah.
We weren't like game to go, baby.
Yeah,
we were
not competing. Yeah.
No, we were done. And I played 4 total points. And so I told Element this. I said, if you want to feel bad about your playing time, you can feel bad about it. But you are not allowed to bring the team down because of that. And it's a brutal feeling. And if you haven't been there because you've just been gifted with your experience as an ultimate and you're one of the better players or you're positioned to do something that the team needs, definitely don't be a jerk about it or being like frustrated that you get to play so much and that you're tired. Like none of that's happening either. Everyone should be treating this as like when you get to play, it is a privilege and you are here for the team. But you are going to get frustrated at times because you might get benched. You might be an all-star and get benched. There's this other whole version of like ego. So I talk about that story every time to set expectations of like the coaches know what it's like. It does not feel good, but it might happen to you. And then outside of that, you're still going to have a conversation with someone because you might have this moment and you just need to go direct to that person and be like, hey, I noted this. I'm sorry that you feel this way. Here's why. You got to be candid and honest and diplomatic about what might have happened. Yep. You want to address it and say like, hey, I know that that doesn't feel good. But conversely, coaches suck when they don't say anything up front to their team. Like PT might change. You didn't tell anybody that before this tournament. That's a huge loss on you for how you're leading and coaching the team. So you just have to have these conversations up front.
Yeah.
Okay. I rambled on for 7 minutes right there.
No, I love that. That's actually a really good point. I actually have had to deal with that even this season. You're not allowed to bring the team down. You're with these feelings. Like you're allowed to have these feelings and you should feel these feelings. You're not allowed to bring the team down. That is your responsibility because we're still performing. After we're done, we can start having a conversation about it. I agree with that. And front loading all the conversations so you give context to why they're going to be feeling certain ways. Like telling them why the lines changed, telling them whatever. I think that's great. Glad I asked that question. See, I'm just good at this interview stuff.
Can I give you one thing that I experienced that I
love
well,
it.
Yeah,
go for it. We got mad
time. I'll give you an experience. I will not use the name of my coach, but like they know who they. So in 2018, at I think like the second tournament, is my last season playing, and I'm a captain. Our offensive coach pulled me aside the Friday before this tournament. So I think it's like we had a tournament, we had pretty loose lines, and then we were going to have like a starting line. Mm-hmm. And he's like, hey, so the coaches have talked, and what we've decided is like, there's Simon Montague. Mm-hmm. He's got this superpower. You can throw it anywhere on the field. He's a standstill hucker. We're going to isolate to him. We've got Dylan, who's going to be able to get this, do like all these fast motion things. And then we've got like you and Chris Kasednar. And basically you guys right now fulfill like a pretty similar role. Chris is younger and he's kind of better on defense. You're maybe more dynamic on offense, but generally speaking, like you guys would fill another role there that's similar. And so like, given that we think Simon and Dylan have these like really strong offensive capabilities, and we think like you kind of have some of the stuff that both Dylan does, like you like to give and go, but you're not as fast or young as he is, and you are a good you good in my mind, like crappy, but like you're a pretty good center handler, standstill hucker like Simon, but you're not as good as Simon in that regard. Chris kind of does the thing that we need that's unique. And so we have like 3 different characteristics, and you kind of overlap with 2 of these guys. So we're going to ask, like, we're just letting you know, we think you're going to be the first guy off the handler bench, but we see you like playing in big games. Like, this isn't about you not playing ever again. It's just probably like, you're not in the starting lineup for this tournament. And I remember I'm sitting here and I'm like, cool, let me give you feedback. You just tried to like come up with this construct of why you are hoping that I'm going to be like receptive to being like put off the starting lineup for the first time. What you should know is, if I've bought in to the team being as successful as possible, and you walked up to me and said, hey, the coaches chatted, the best 7 guys on the field are the following 7, and we think you're 8 or 9 or 10 or whatever that is, so we want you to play this role. That's the conversation of, don't come up with these don't do the like mental gymnastics of like, you're a 25% overlap with this guy and a 30% overlap with this guy, but this other guy has like this. I'm like, dude, that's a stupid conversation, because now you're getting into like, I can argue with you.
Yeah.
Just tell me who the best 7 are, why and where I fit in, and what do you expect out of me? That's the type of conversation. If you can have that with everybody, then you're bringing up the level of like responsibility with players, and you're leveling them up as contributors to the team. Because then if they come up and they're like, well, no, I actually think I'm 6th. Then you're like, dude, don't open up that can of worms.
Yeah.
That's a different conversation that I don't think people want to gravitate towards. So anyways, I don't know if that's a helpful way of distinguishing how to actually have these conversations with people about.
I think it's a good way. It's kind of like when you have a hard conversation with a player, it's being direct and leaving no room, because it's an executed decision. We've executed a decision. This is where you are. This is where we've said it. We need you to be ready when you're ready, or when you're called. There's no discussion. We're not discussing the executed decision right now.
Yeah. And the other thing that I think you and I experienced, because we got coached by Daryl, was if you're a leader on a team, the expectations on you to be the guy who can handle pressure and be a good steward for the culture is elevated by a significant margin. 100%. And so if you try to have that conversation, you're going to look like a clown, because he's going to be like, dude, do you care about yourself or do you care about the team?
Yeah. Totally. Yeah. Yep. It's tough being a leader. Yep. Okay. So I think you've hit a lot of these things. You coached across gender, and I'm really curious about this. There are going to be coaches who coach across different identities, whether it's gender, racial, language, and you are one of the coaches that I picked have all some sort of like differences between the players that they coach, and you're one of them. This is kind of why I wanted to hit you up and do this, is because you coached a women's college team. What the question that I have, and I got to read it, in what ways do you believe that differing identities has sculpted your approach to coaching?
Yeah, that's like the most interesting conversation of the ones that I saw that you'd like put together. I was like, yeah, this one is the one that's like, it's an interesting and tricky conversation. So like, the first thing that popped into my mind is there's so many ways to look at like unique differences, right? And then how do they show up in the division you're playing in? How do they show up at the level that you're playing in? And then how do they show up like culturally within the team at the individual level? Like, it is really interesting. So I'll just give you an example. Like, the very first thing that I thought of was like, when I first showed up to Seattle, it was more culturally unique and diverse than it was in Santa Cruz, than it was in Southern California, where I grew up, in this particular pocket I grew up. But where I ended up coaching, which was in North Seattle, and then at UW, that was its own pocket of like, and then what's the cultural makeup of those areas? So one of the distinguishing factors that I think we can focus on that's like a little bit easier is that, I'm a guy who is coaching a women's college team, and that is a unique kind of component. And when I was there, one of the first things that I remember saying is like, all of you are having a different experience. We talk about this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Your skill set, your emotional state, your like age, what year you've played, all that shit.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's this whole other component of like who you are and what you represent that adds to this layer of like complexity and interesting, unique components. And then I want to call out that like I'm the only male in this circle of experience.
Mm-hmm.
And you're all generally like, and you're the decision maker, you're the voice of like all this stuff. And what I just said, and this is I think it's like the blanket statement of this question. It doesn't really get into like the nuance, because I just generally think things weren't like Seattle is not as culturally or uniquely diverse as almost any other city, but there are pockets that I missed because of where I ended up coaching that would have a different answer. But here's what I told the team from a coaching perspective. I said, here's my responsibility. My responsibility is to push you all, be respectful to you, make sure as often as I can that I've communicated to you expectations ahead of time, and to be honest with you. So like if you're not meeting any of these things, you're going to know. None of those things are about you as an individual. That's about the team and my responsibility to the team, but how you fall into that, right? Because we have these like multiple roles. Then I said, but then there's Danny. And Danny has a responsibility, which is like my values are that I want to be kind when I need to be, but have integrity, which means that I'm going to sometimes have to tell you that you're being a jerk or you are being a downer for the team and you need to like pull it together. And also that I'm human, I'm going to make some mistakes. And I concretely said, there's going to be a time where I'm going to say something like, fuck them. And you're going to be like, hey, I don't ever like to get fired up because you're talking about other people. I want it to be about us. And I need you to give me the grace to be like, it's okay that you said that. It doesn't fire me up, but I understand maybe there's an intention and rationale and we can talk about it afterwards. I don't need to like break down. That applies to a bunch of stuff. And I said, sometimes I might refer to something in a way that you're going to be like, hey, we don't talk about that. As an example, this was 2010. The idea of using language like person matching.
Person matching.
So this was like where the like
2010, the time.
2010. This is like when I think the language and nuance of language was really starting to like trickle into the ultimate scene. And I do want to say that, from a perspective here, like going back to Seattle and the space here of like people are in it from elementary school and on, I think a lot of this nuance took hold earlier in Seattle than in other cities. And so I remember the captains were like, hey, here are a couple things that we would love for you to work on before I ever come up to a practice. They were like, we don't like to be referred to as ladies. So don't ever be like, all right, let's go ladies. And I remember being like, check, put that one in the, like, you got to remember not to do that. But another was I was playing ECU that year. Then I was playing sockeye. And I remember I said, hey, we're going to be in zone and then we're going to transition to man on man. And afterwards, one of the captains came up to me and said, hey, we'd like to use person defense. I was like, okay, great. These are like small things. So all that to say, and by the way, I said ladies once in 2 years that I was there. There's a player who had given me that feedback when we first started. She was a captain both years. And she said, hey, one of the things I was most proud of you is you literally said ladies one time in 2 years. And that's like awesome. For me, I'm like, that's a huge win because I feel like I'm mumbling and jumbling and talking to you about 100 million things I'm talking for too long. And I'm almost always going to use a term incorrectly. So that's a big win.
But to your point, it's super difficult to change language quickly, especially when there's a lot of like flow state that you get into.
Totally. Yeah. Absolutely. So I'm mumbling here, meandering, but to that answer, the thing that came to my mind is like when there are unique elements, like unique characteristics or of the team, of an individual, of the sport that you're playing at large, the first thing to do is, again, just have a transparent conversation. Like, you're human, I'm human. I'm your coach, but I am also a person who's an idiot here and an idiot at home. So like, give me grace, because for sure there are moments where I'm going to give you grace, and that's part of our relationship. And if you think it only goes one way, that like I'm only giving you grace, or you should only be giving me grace, then we have a problem, and that's bad for us. So that's, I think, the like broad strokes approach that I think helps when you think about the like question that you're really asking. I'm fortunate that the players on Element those 2 years, I think, were some of the best human beings I've ever coached. High buy-in, high willingness to like understand who we are as humans across the board. And so there were these blips that everyone has, but we were able to be like, but that's not a thing. That's just like let's correct that and let's go, because again, we had this understanding about the human connection that we have. I do think that that's a missing element of Ultimate at large. You know, some of my access points, which I know you have, are like you go onto Reddit Ultimate, but like anything, you know, it's a cesspool like any other of when someone wants to say something or take an angle of approach and say like, you know, this person made a bad play and it's because of X, Y, Z reason. Well, now we're attacking their character without knowing anything about them. And if we started with like, have you ever been in a position where you made a play inadvertently and you were really upset that happened? Like you were like, oh man, that was really sad. What if it was that scenario? How would you want people to treat you?
Yeah.
It'd be great if we started more of our conversations like that. And I think in the team, you have to have those conversations early on.
I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. And I think this is something that actually I know I can learn on, is setting up the established relationship between the team and the coach up front, by having a transparent conversation about there are going to be moments in this season where there are going to be blips on the map. There are going to be execution errors. There are going to be times in which we just get frustrated with each other. And to know that from this point on, we are in each other's corner. And this is just going to be the state of the game at that moment in which the heat is too high, or the state of that drill where the heat got too high. Just know that we need to allow each other some grace, but also realize that we're in this together. We're trying to win together, and we need to find the common ground. And and realizing that, honestly, it is just humans. I wish I had gotten kind of that specific piece of knowledge way earlier.
You wish that you'd been coached by me. I understand. I respect it.
Yeah, we didn't go through that in the Kaimana championship that we won in 2015.
Oh, slugs! That's right, baby. That's right. We didn't have many trials and tribulations there.
There were no tryouts either.
There should have been.
Probably. That's a good piece of information, especially across different identities, trying to figure it out. You're just trying to find common ground. You're trying to, hey, the thing that's aligning us all together is Ultimate. Let's try to learn from each other and respect each other. Okay, you've coached a little bit of youth, mostly youth. I don't think you've coached adults, except I guess college is kind of that transition into adult.
Yeah, I had the year with Riot. That was
that year with Riot, assistant coach.
Yeah.
And is there any apparent notices or differences, things that you've noted between coaching youth and coaching adults? Something that you've had to change?
Yes. When I saw that question, I'll share two anecdotes. So one was I was coaching this middle school team in North Seattle, and it was like, dude, it was straight up the like what's that movie with where all the kids are just like an assembly of ragtag kids from different parts of the school dynamic, and then different ages, and some that want to be there and some that don't want to be there. There's that movie. It's not Sandlot, but there's like a movie. I can't remember, but my team was like
Stand By Me.
I think it was Paddington 2. So there was 3
Harry Potter. Go on.
Yeah. So there was like 3 kids who had been playing soccer and football and basically got kicked off those teams because of grades. And they were like, if you want to play sports, the only team you can sign up for right now is Frisbee. So they were playing Frisbee because they just wanted a sports outlet, but they were like, what is this? We're not even interested in being here. It was a mixed team because it was the first year of the team.
Yep.
And we had 3 girls who joined because they were just friends and wanted to play sports. And we had 2 boys who basically had like nothing. They were just like, I don't even know why I'm here. And then we had a couple kids who had played Ultimate.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I was like, what's the one thing that can unify all these kids? And you know what it was?
What?
Having fun. How do I make practices as fun as possible? Mm-hmm. And so I was like asking other coaches, and they're like, yeah, our kids are, mostly all of their stories were like, yeah, our kids have been playing for the last 4 years together. So, what we're thinking about doing for fun is like learning like a play stopping zone. And I'm like, cool. All right. So here's what we're going to do. We're not going to do any drills, and we're just going to play games of different versions of games. Mm-hmm. We were playing mini. Mm-hmm. We were playing like the narrow game that we 3-on-2 tube. We were playing like 500. Mm-hmm. And then I would be like, okay, and here's what a stack is in this context.
Yeah.
What I want you to do is like not think about where you're going. I just want you guys to get in a line and hold hands. And then this person is going to be the one who's like in the game, and everyone else is just like cheering them on. So anyways, this is how I know fun is the unifier. Everyone loved getting hucked to. Everyone loved the idea that like everyone's cheering them on. That team went 7-2 and got to the finals of our like Division D. And I had 3 out of 12 kids who had ever played Ultimate. And the parents were coming up to me and they're like, the reason this was awesome is that our kid would come back and be like, that was fun. That's all they said every single time. They didn't tell me about the nuances of the sport. They didn't tell me what they were learning. They were just like, yeah, it was really fun. I had like a great time. So that is the same thing that I applied with Element, which is like inevitably, if you can make it fun, these kids will stick with the sport. Mm-hmm. Will care about them, the way that they show up. They'll care about the team output. But if you grind them down, if you yell at them, if you create these like mechanisms where practices are really lame, you're going to lose the inevitable interest and the belief, which I will always hold true until I die, is that you can marry being an elite competitor and being joyful in the same level. Mm-hmm. So that's the answer of what holds true across them. And then all the other stuff is like what holds, not true across them, which is like skill level, passion, interest, and capability.
I love that. Yeah, that reminds me of coaching high school again. Although I used to get hard on the good players, on like the players who were trying to take it very seriously, but they also had egos, and their egos needed to be pushed down a little bit. Yeah.
And that's always that goes into like the, mm-hmm. How do you deal with an individual? I think individual level, right? So
I used to get Greg Cohen out to. So I coached the freshman boys at Berkeley High School. I used to get Greg Cohen out during when he was kind of in his peak, out to practice in North Berkeley, and we would just have all these freshman boys playing on this small field, and I would be like, Greg, go play with them. And he and I would both play with the teams, and we'd try to even it out and stuff. And I would be like, and there's this guy who's on Revolver right now. His name is Leo Gordon. I have footage from when Leo's a freshman going deep. Greg is even with the thrower. This kid throws up a deep ball to Leo, who's going deep, and Greg just sprints off It just jumps over him and blocks it. And Leo had been trash talking Greg the whole time.
Oh, that's amazing.
And Greg this is when he was a UFA or AUDL MVP. He had been national champion already. And he just comes from like 40 yards away and blocks this thing.
Sick.
And
humble pie right there.
Yeah, and I have footage of it because I was like filming it at that point. To just like, I don't know. Greg was in that point. I was like, I feel like Greg might do something. I kind of want to film this.
Was Leo on this Revolver team that just won?
Yep.
You got to post that as humble beginnings, humble beginnings.
It's on my Instagram. I'll find it.
Yeah, that's great.
Humble beginnings. Love it. There's a couple questions left. These are going to be fun ones. What coaches in Ultimate or outside do you look up to?
Well, obviously Daryl Nounan. I can opine on him for a second, but obviously I think, where I think in my life, I have centered on the values that are important to me outside of Ultimate were heavily influenced by him and the way he showed up as a coach. One is like, when you meet him, he's like a good human being at heart. He cares for the people around him. He cares for his family. He is like a loving person, but he's not like a sappy, kind of person.
Not sappy at all.
He's kind of like, he can be serious, but he knows when to toggle and show you that he like really cares about you. He's also a competitor. So, he was the guy who would have the honest conversation with you. And he's like, listen, you think that you're the shit. And then reality, you're just good at offense. You suck at defense. Mm-hmm. So like, you care about playing defense. Like that was a conversation he had with me, my senior year. Mm-hmm. And, that's like an eye-opening conversation to be like, I needed an adult that I trusted. Mm-hmm. It wasn't my parents to tell me that. Mm-hmm. And that's the type of coach that I think, I really needed and I think is a value. I was coached by Idris Nolan and Matty Rodkey. And I think that it was an interesting thing because I think that now in hindsight, I actually appreciated their coaching way more than I did when I was there because, Daryl was like he kind of hated everything that I needed when I needed it. But those guys weren't there for every practice in the way that they had been. Idris was and Matty were like my freshman year. And then a little bit of my sophomore year. Yeah, my sophomore year. And then Daryl was there. But had they been there, I think it's a totally different relationship. Like if they had continued to coach, I would have had like a different relationship. But one thing that I will say about those is like, coaches that are the guys who are willing to pull you aside and be a really good player development coach because they can be like, hey, there's this thing you're doing. If you do it this way, or you think about it this way, you're going to get way better. And Matty was like really good at that. He's still good at that. He, even at our like alum, he could like identify little things about people that he was seeing in our scrimmages to be like, if we just did that, like we'd be competing and or doing this better. And then Idris was the guy who I think, his playing career was like, if you look at a coach and they happen to, you're fortunate to have a coach who's playing either in their prime or after or whatever, and you can be like, let me watch some footage as an example. Idris was like incredible at solving. He was like the QB in football, Peyton Manning, very famously, like he'd see the guy 3 over who kind of put a little bit more emphasis on his right foot than his left foot. And he realized they're going to run this type of different play. And so he's going to call an audible on the play because of the nuance to counter it. And Idris was doing that stuff in real time playing in a way that I think very few guys were. So he could solve whatever he was looking at. And I don't think, like, if I had been a senior with him as a coach, I would have been able to, I think, really elevate and evolve from his coaching. So I think one thing that I would say is like, there's for everyone, every coach I've ever had has been a humongous, has had a humongous influence. And it's actually now in retrospect where you can recognize where they did or didn't, when sometimes you can't see it in real time. But one, I will throw out that one other coach I've already brought up that I think was just phenomenal was Lou Burris. He just coaches. His coaching philosophy is not diametrically opposed to mine, but it's like one of those things where it's like game respect game kind of a thing where we would be talking about something and I'm like, oh my God, you're thinking on like, you're playing chess, I'm playing checkers still. So, I just think he's just an incredible mind.
What is his philosophy? How is his philosophy so different from yours?
I think his philosophy is like, I want to say this without sounding like I'm on the opposite end of this, but like, we are both in the trust your players camp. Mm-hmm. He takes that like by 5x. And he's like, listen, if I got a great player and they've got the disc and they want to do XYZ thing out of nowhere because they see that happening in real time, like, good, that's what we needed. And I'm probably like, I trust you to do the right thing, but the right thing is probably XYZ thing. If you start to do ABC, I'm going to be like, is anyone else on the same page with you? And he's like, the next layer of trust is that your other players on the field are going to see that person doing this maybe different thing. And they're going to be like, now I'm going to figure out how to like join in on the party. Mm-hmm. So he just he goes to these places where I'm just like, dude, that's incredible. I in my best days, I hope to touch, the edge of his thinking from a coaching perspective.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Emergence. That's how new systems emerge. That's how new play styles emerge. Just allowing play to occur.
Yeah.
Okay. Just a couple more questions. Okay. In Ultimate, which players do you look up to the most?
What's your dream answer here? Is it like specific names or is it like archetypes?
It can be anything you want. You get to take it where you want.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna direct you.
I think so I think the like right answer is archetypes, right? Like when I was coaching Element, there is this player, her name is Kirsten, and she was like the hardest working player by far. She was our fastest player, our best, in some ways, like our best athlete defender. And she cared, like she was like the one reading articles about, how do you actually train and when do you eat carbs versus not, right? And this is in 2010, right?
20.
Yeah, like that's like centuries ago, basically, in terms of nutrition and exercise science. But one thing that she was phenomenal at as part of that was a disagree but align. And so if I had a thing where she's like, that's stupid, but I'm going to do it as hard as I can because that's what the team needs, I would only have that conversation with her afterwards. And so there's that, like, I think the soldier mentality is what we used to call it, is like, you're there and you're going to do whatever you need to do because the team's saying it. I think soldier mentality is maybe not like the term that is used anymore, but damn, that was, as a coach, that was like the best of the best kind of experience. Cassidy, Rasmussen is like a great example of like, he's just going to care about his fitness. He's going to care about doing what's best for the team. He probably has harder opinions than Kirsten did, but great example. Like, I love that I got to play with him in college and be the kind of person that he looked up to, and then in club be a peer of his where he's like very clearly a better player overall. And I'm just like, dude, you're crushing it. So good for you. I'm so happy. Another archetype that I love is, I'll give you two last ones. I'll be brief on them. One is, there's this book that I read that was specifically about the like archetypes in a team, but it was across all sports. And so this guy had analyzed like every sport and then identified that there was these types of personalities. And one of them was the try hard. And the try hard, which is different than Cassidy and different than Kirsten. But the tryhard is like, they are going to go at 150%. They're like Michael Jordan, but a little bit maybe less of like all the other things that come with him being like the number one. Doesn't matter. But like in a track workout, they are the one who's like, yes, I'm the person who I'm puking on the sideline because I actually went harder than I should have, but that's because I'm trying to beat you. Mm-hmm. And that guy, like Dylan Freechild, is a great example of try. Like, that dude cares so much about every point, every practice, everything that he's doing, that he's going to bring the team along. And in that book, the thing that blew my mind was that he actually tried to attribute the outcomes to each of these archetypes. And he basically said that, this is like, I read this 12 years ago, so like, let me hear, but essentially that was the only archetype that could notably and demonstrably move the impact of a team uniquely on their own. Everybody else was like, they basically had, if you had a couple of these guys or women, you were good. But if you're missing them, you suck. But like everyone mostly had these types of archetypes, and there was no outcome differentiation. But like a tryhard, if you had at least one tryhard on your team, you actually had better outcomes. Wow. But they're very unique. Like, it's actually a distinction between Cassidy and Dylan.
That is no, and I feel like I understand the difference between those two pretty, because I know Cassidy pretty well and like have seen what he does versus the stories that I've heard of Dylan. It's a different level of emotional
yes,
commitment.
It's like they can't control or help it instead of it being calculated and like you're going for it. It's just like it's embedded in their DNA.
It's exactly like Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan is like, notably would cry after losses, just like after just like a whatever game.
Yeah,
just because his body couldn't handle losing.
Yes. Yeah. And then the thing with that comes like, we were talking about the wavelengths of people is like, they are like this.
Yes.
And Cassidy is like this, and I'm like this. Mm-hmm. So there's always pros and cons on each of those, but I really appreciate that now that I got to play with Dylan and Joe Sefton was another sockeye who I got to experience it. Like, once you get to play with those guys, you're kind of like, I would play with them whenever I can, despite whatever, right? It's just awesome. It's unique. The last one is the glue guy or glue person, which I think the Wall Street Journal just had a referenceable style article about this, referencing it to work. Wow. And they said work cultures and communities actually do well when you have these glue persons on your team. And I won't belabor that one. You get that one, but like, who is the cultural nexus? Who do people want to be around? Who do people respect? Because they look at them and they say, you care about the team, you represent us in the right way, and you're fun to be around. Like, you're not sucking the joy out of this experience. Mm-hmm. Those people are insanely valuable to me. Matt Rader is, to me, at the pinnacle of that in my sockeye career, which is like, you just had, even though he was always up and down as well, like, you just wanted to be around him. And then he was also, on any given day, he was more likely or not your best player. And so those are the rare
archetypes. I love that. The archetypes. Archetypes. I love that. Okay. Then that wasn't okay. Did I say who's your favorite player of all time? Was that question? Or was that the, what players do you look up to?
Yeah. What players do you look up to?
Okay. Then who's your favorite player of all time?
Whoa. That's a wild question.
Malika needed me to rephrase it, and I rephrased it a little bit differently for her, but I'm curious how you want to take it.
Who is your favorite player of all time?
In Ultimate, specifically.
I mean, that's like, it's almost like I don't know which direction to take it.
You can go, because you and Malika had, I mean, I think all of us, right? We have our different ways you can take it, because you could talk about something more intimate. You could talk about something like, no, this is just the greatest player, and I still fan out to this person, or it could be, whatever.
Oh my God. Can I give you a couple answers here just so that I can cover my bases, or do you need a one? What's your dream here, Raj? Are you like, is the force function to be like, just give me a name because I want to understand
part of this experiment is really just trying to see how coaches at this level who have had a plethora of experience and have been through the sport interpret the question.
Okay. Here's I'm gonna be rapid fire.
Yep.
In terms of, if I were to pick because it's like almost impossible for me to do this. I actually was like, in my brain, I'm just like, it doesn't work. Like the math isn't working anywhere. If I were to, across the time that I've played, certainly, and coached, the most dominant handler that I think I ever played against and got to play with was Ashlyn Joy. The most dominant cutter or downfield kind of person was Raider.
Really?
Yeah, because I think I got to play with Bo, and against Bo, but I think the reality is, like, if you were to ask me who do I think is going to give you the chance to win the most, I'm going to say Bo.
Sure.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
Like I think data wise, like you can't even have him. And I think Kurt is like maybe right below him in that manner. But I add in all the other stuff of, like, I got to see him at practices. I got to see how he's, like, his presence, what he's bringing to the team beyond just his athleticism. And I think he, in his peak years, which I put between like probably 17 to 21, which is insane because he's been playing sockeye since 8. He just, it was awesome. But then there's a couple other layers here. Like, I think Robbie Cahill, who is a Hall of Famer, is underappreciated for his overall capabilities. I think Kurt Gibson was just like, you really, if there was a 7-on-7, if Kurt isn't a top 3 pick for every player that played in that era, they'd be lying to themselves. They're coming up with a reason not to put him on that instead of like, this is actually why, because it's true. I think he's probably unstoppable. And then I put Daryl as, like, I got to play with Daryl on Revolver, and I just remember we went from, like, he's my coach and my friend to being my teammate and my friend, and we go to practices and he's like, this is what I'm seeing. What are you seeing? And then we're talking about it kind of like, not peers at that time. I'm like 20 and he's 40. He's 40. I'm 40 right now, and he was playing elite club. But it was incredible to, like, how to share the field together in that way and just be like, dude, there's no one who's 40 that I know who could ever be playing an elite point. So to that point, there's this credit of, like, that's just something none of those guys are going to have. Maybe Kurt is 40 right now and can go slay in club right now still.
He could still slay. He played Condors last year, actually.
Kurt played Condors last year?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Goose called him up, said, yo, what did you do for club? And he was just like, nothing. And he was just like, come play Condors.
Wow.
Just, like, show up for regionals. Like, it'll be cool. We'll make it work. And he did.
Did he play ORD?
No idea. There is some footage that you can find, though.
Crazy.
Deep in the
Crazy.
cut.
Yeah.
And he looked good.
I could show up at 40 and field a pull and throw it to Simon. and then hope that there's no turn.
People will never really know this, but there is footage of Daryl playing in his late 30s at, like, there's, like, old footage that you can find. I was talking to Woody, Chris Sherwood.
Yeah.
has just mountains of footage on CDs. And there's like, I don't know if it's Trouble in Vegas. What's the one? Not that was the college tournament, but there was another Vegas tournament that had like Voltron, which was like actually like a young squad, and then versus Jam and Friends. And Daryl's out there cooking.
There is footage of the 06 Revolver team playing Chain in quarters.
Yep.
And Daryl's on there.
Yep, seen that.
That was a sad game, being up 5 and then losing.
There's footage of Chaos playing.
Yeah.
And Daryl was a huge contributor to that, obviously.
Rob of Alti Village has like a cornucopia of footage that never made any of these cuts that are just raw footage somewhere.
I messaged Rob trying to get some footage. I never got a response. I think he like bailed out of the sport, I think is what I. Well, but yeah, there was the one little anecdote before we go on to the last question. We played Slugs went as the current team in like 2014 or something to Kaimana, or maybe 2013, I can't remember. And I was an alumni at that point because I had just finished grad school, and there were 2 alumni that were invited to go play with the current team, and we had it was the Mudpocalypse Kaimana. And Daryl was also there. Daryl played with us. And we're in this quarterfinal against this team called Club Prince, which was all, I believe, Johnny Bravo and some Revolver players, all current players. And we're the current UC Santa Cruz Slug team. This is peak college Greg Cohen, Brett Peterson, Justin, I can't remember what Justin's last name is right now. And then Daryl out on offense, running a side stack, 4-person dominator on one side of the field, essentially vertical cuts, and a side stack where the dudes in that stack, I think, maybe played the whole game, never touched the disc. And there's in this game, Daryl's deep in his 40s at this point. Deep. He might even be in 50 at this point. And we straight up win this game.
Oh my God. That's incredible.
And this is like pure mud conditions. I'm head to toe covered in mud. And there was one point where one of the guys in that stack came out, tried to get the ball, and disrupted the flow. And there was a turnover and they got broken. And that line starts walking to the other side, and Daryl is raging. And he just goes over to those guys and he's like, if you're in the fucking side stack, get the fuck out of the way until we really need you, okay? Your whole job is to get the fuck out of the way. And,
how good does this story go with my commentary about what a great night?
This is just for you and me. This will be on a different cut.
I hope it stays on.
I don't know if I can swear. Maybe I'll bleep it out.
You gotta be ready to roll with the punches and what you got.
At one point, dudes they didn't get broken for the rest of the game. They got broken once. We got 2 breaks, and the other sideline at one point, Daryl's just in the backfield, gets the ball because we threw space throws the whole time. You just get the ball and then immediately break the mark. Immediately break the mark over and over and over. And at one point, the Club Prince guys are raging at each other. The next person that lets that old man break the fucking mark is not playing. Something like that. And
so good.
Broken again. And it's just like,
isn't it so satisfying?
It's so funny. And none of them knew who he was.
Yeah.
Not a single person.
That's the best part, Daryl.
At one point, Brett throws this full field hug to Greg, and Greg gets up over a pile of 4 defenders, reaching over Evan Boucher's face and grabbing this disc while all of them are tackling him to the ground for a goal.
He loves getting tackled for his deep.
And he gets up, and we just rushed the field.
Yeah.
They didn't know what was happening. It was one of the best times. Yeah. Anyways, that's an amazing one. The last one.
Oh man.
This is the last question. This is a quick one. What is the one significant piece of advice you received from another coach that still resonates with you today?
Ooh, I know exactly what this answer is, but it wasn't from a coach. It was from a captain. Can I share that?
Yeah.
Because they were, I mean, the captains of the club team, kind of like. I just told him this story 2 years ago, and he's like, I have no recollection of ever saying this to you. And it played the most. There's two. I mean, Daryl gave me some feedback in college that was consequential, but this played the most like critical. I became a fundamentally different player. And I think of my like peak playing career, this is what I became known for. And it came back to this conversation. So Revolver 07. We are not like, 06, we get to nationals unexpectedly. Then we get to quarters and we're up in quarters. We think we're going to go to semis. Then we chunder. And so 07, we added like a couple of guys and we're like, all right, semis, maybe finals. That's kind of the like mentality we're coming into, but it's still that like bloodbath of a regionals. And we go to sectionals and we play like just okay. And we're out to dinner on Saturday. Like we played just okay. And we're out to dinner and we're like in line at the restaurant. And I'm talking to Chris McManus, who's the captain of Revolver. And he's like, I'm like, what do you think about today? We're chatting. And then he goes, Danny, we have too many turnovers. And how many turnovers do you think is okay to have in a game if you're on the O-line? And I'm like, that's like 20. I'm like, oh, yeah, I think you like carry the 3. You do this. I think it's like, you could have like 7. And he's like, yeah, I think about it this way. If everyone on the team thinks the answer is more than 0, then that means that everyone thinks it's okay to have a turnover. Just like one turnover. And he's like, and we have 27 guys on our roster. And I think you'd agree that if 27 guys had one turnover each, we would lose our games by a lot, right? And I'm like, yeah, that sounds stupid. Like, that's crazy. And he's like, so until we're on a team where everyone decides that 0 is the answer, we're never going to be successful. And then he looks at me and he's like, so until you decide that, we're definitely not going to be successful. And I was like pretty bad that year. I was pretty bad on Revolver. I thought I was like a rising kind of young kid. I was like bad. And I remember I was like, dude, that's the most accurate feedback I've, not feedback, but like view the sport for offense. And dude, you put me in my place. Like, I do not value the disc over trying to make plays with the disc. And that took me in a completely different direction in my entire career.
Chris McManus, man. Shout out to Chris McManus.
I told that 2 years ago, or like 3 years ago. He came to Seattle and he's having dinner with my brother and I. And I'm like, hey, by the way, I just got to give you credit. Like, that was huge. And he's like, I said that? I'm like, yeah, you said that. He's like, I have no recollection at all of any of that. And I'm like, cool. Well, just, I didn't sleep that night because of you. And now I'm a different player because of you. So like, thank you. And he's like, wow, that's crazy. And he's like, wow, isn't it crazy how sometimes coaches or captains give you feedback or something happens in your life and it has this like insanely meaningful quality to you, but to them, it's like, I was just a conversation, And it's true. I do think that's part of being a captain or a leader, which is like, you got to remember that you can have this like incredibly impactful experience with somebody because you're in this position and you may not realize it, but they do. And it's important to always like put that lens on, which is like, I might be a dick and it ruins their interest in playing, or I might say something really incredible and powerful and eloquent, and it might change the trajectory of their entire ultimate career.
That's great. Danny, you're amazing. Thank you so much for hopping on this. This is, I don't know how I'm going to cut through all this and make it digestible for
Was I the longest one you've done?
I mean, Malika and I went for over an hour.
I think we just did an hour and 45 minutes.